Howdy. Today, we will be witnessing the ultimate showdown between FansToys Roadking and X-Transbots Gravestone, so that you can determine once and for all which is the best figure for your masterpiece collection. In terms of accessories, they both come with one alternate face sculpt, one blaster, and one sword. And, ironically enough, the larger weapons belong to X-Transbots Gravestone, which is the smaller figure. The process to exchange the face sculpts is relatively simple on both figures, but that doesn't necessarily make it easy. On the FansToys, there are quite a couple segments of the helmet you have to remove before you can reach the face sculpt, which is attached via a large peg in the center of the face and a slightly smaller peg near the top, which is probably used for alignment but seems a little unusual to me. And then all you have to do is reattach all three segments of the helmet, and you're in business. The X-Transbots is a little bit more frustrating. It's only attached by one tab, but the cowl isn't removable from the helmet. The head is kind of stuck inside, so this is how much you have to put some effort into it if you don't use any tools with your figures, which I don't like to. When it comes to accuracy, both of these figures made some stylistic choices that differ from the G1 image of Motormaster. On the left, you can see FansToys, because their transformation turns into both the cab and trailer, much like the original toy, have some gray parts on the sides of the arms, the sides of the legs, as well as the front of the legs as well, where the X-Transbots looks a lot closer to the original image. However, instead of using dark gray as a sort of accent color, they instead go with this purple color. Now, that may be distracting to some people, so it'll be up to you to decide whether you like the purple or whether you want the dark gray. Either way, I think both of these figures are close enough to the G1 image that either one could realistically be argued as being more accurate to the G1 cartoon. They may both look pretty close to how Motormaster appears in the cartoon, but they're definitely different sizes. Using the Sunbow chart that was put together by members of the community, you can see that Motormaster is theoretically supposed to be the same size as Optimus Prime, and neither of them are terribly close. X-Transbots Gravestone gets the closest, but he's still a considerable amount taller than Optimus. But FansToys is nearly a whole head taller, so this is gonna have to be up to you and how you imagine Motormaster compares with Optimus or Megatron. Here is the articulation. In terms of articulation, although they may have similar ranges, the extra joints of articulation on the X-Transbots make it much easier to put in dynamic poses, as you can see here. Now, going around these figures, you can see they both have a bit of a backpack. The difference is the FansToys takes all the panels that make up the sides of the trailer and basically puts it on the back, whereas the X-Transbots is actually taking a considerable portion of the cab and folding it up to make this kind of box for the torso. But both of these figures look pretty good regardless. Now, in terms of the paint, the sculpt, the materials, the paint is great on both of them. FansToys has a little bit more of a metallic fleck in some of the black paint, but it still uses a lot of flat white and flat gray paint. The X-Transbots has this lovely purple paint that is kind of hardly seen on the FansToys at all, but the FansToys has a bunch of exposed die cast as well. Both of these figures can pose reasonably well, but the FansToys feels a lot better because the materials feel a lot more sturdy. There are a couple flimsy joints and thin parts of the X-Transbots. This was a couple of years ago when they were still making this kind of questionable plastic that makes you cringe every time you bend something the wrong way. Now let's talk about the transformation. Seeing as how they look so good in robot and vehicle mode, naturally the transformation on both of these is not a walk in the park. The difference being, because the FansToys is made up of so many large panels, it really gets unwieldy at times, and it's kind of a frustrating transformation. Obviously, it's not to the same level of complexity as like an X-Transbots Commander stack, but just the sheer size of the panels and the fact that they often get in the way can make for a pretty frustrating transformation experience. Otherwise, both of these transformations can be done roughly about 10 to 15 minutes if you get it down. The X-Transbots definitely has a lot more steps to it, and it has a bunch of smaller panels that kind of maneuver their way into place. But again, with that X-Transbots plastic, you really gotta watch how you're bending it, because I think you can get through it without too much X-Transbot swag, bending plastic past plastic, but you really have to constantly think about the way that you're moving parts past each other, because it can get challenging. The largest difference between both of these figures is by far the vehicle mode, and at this point, it's kind of up to you. Do you want a Motormaster that just turns into the cab? Then buy the X-Transbots. Do you want a Motormaster that miraculously turns into the cab and the trailer? Then buy the FansToys. They're both pretty solid vehicle modes, and neither of them really look a whole lot like the cartoon in so much as they're not super simplified. They both have a bunch of little real-world vehicle details, including a ton of rivets. The biggest difference, I would say, are the much more angled windows on the top of the X-Transbots cab versus the FansToys cab, which are much more in line with the front of the vehicle. Additionally, if you stack them side by side, you'll see that the X-Transbots definitely has a taller bed area, if you will. I don't know what the term is for a semi-truck, but you can see that there's definitely a lot more thickness in the back versus the FansToys, where it's basically just two struts with the wheels attached. It looks a lot more like Optimus Prime in the fact that the legs become the back of the truck, where, again, the FansToys is just basically a glorified connector to the rest of the trailer and the rest of the body. Here's how FansToys and X-Transbots Motormaster compare with some other semi-trucks that you might have in your collection. I think the impressive thing about the FansToys is it manages to pull off a pretty large-sized cab, much like the X-Transbots Commander stack, but obviously all four of these look relatively similar in size, so I don't think either of them would look entirely out of place in your collection. And although I know the vehicles don't always scale perfectly with each other, here are the FansToys and X-Transbots cabs in comparison to Takara Tomy Masterpiece Sunstreaker. Especially considering Breakdown is the same Lamborghini Countach, here's how they would look in comparison to some carbots at the MP scale. Also, this was only a few hours before I proceeded to break the door off of Sunstreaker when I tried to transform him. I hope you've enjoyed this ultimate showdown between FansToys Roadking and X-Transbots Gravestone. What are your thoughts with this format? I'm trying to prepare for the King of Third Party comparisons coming up soon, so let me know in the comments down below. Also, if there are any other figures you'd like me to compare next, leave a comment down below. And, as always, I'm Leo, reminding you that plastic toys don't belong in plastic prisons. See you next time.